Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Ramen Shop Detective Agency. I am Detective K. Please have a seat, hang your cups up, and order whatever you like. Today's file is going to be a lot shorter than last time's, I assure you. Sorry that it took the same amount of wait time. I've been busy with other projects and other prospects. But we are back at it, and we will be covering the first official case Yusuke Urameshi goes through in the series Yu Yu Hakusho, and that is for the three sacred artifacts, the three sacred treasures, whatever you want to call them. I more affectionately call this arc the Three Monsters arc. This covers episodes 6, 7, and 8 of the anime and about 6 chapters of the manga. So we're going to do this pretty much the same way we did last episode, just in a shorter format. I'll be summarizing the anime episodes, then going over the manga differences, and then giving my overall thoughts about the arc. So, with that being said, please sit back, relax, and enjoy yourself, and enjoy the food, and enjoy the show. And I did this in the last episode, but just to go over it again. My summaries, analysis, and breakdowns of Yu Yu Hakusho, whether it be story arcs, characters, techniques, etc., are not a substitute for the official series. They are merely here to supplement a series you've already watched. So please support the official release, watch the anime, read the manga, and watch the OVAs and films too at the same time, and buy merchandise. Do all of that. But I'm just here to be a helpful little companion. Okay, let's get to it. So, episode 6 of Yu Yu Hakusho is titled Three Monsters, and it's what I fittingly call the arc due to what we will be getting into. So, it starts off with any normal school day for Yusuke, skipping class, doing his thing. Well, actually, before we even get to Yusuke, we start a little further up in Spirit World, or in the manga, as it likes to be called, Underworld. I believe in the manga too, something we'll get more into once we get to the manga anime differences. I believe they start saying, or Spirit World, or some people like to call it. But in the manga, for the earlier volumes, like volumes 1 through 2, they refer to Spirit World as the Underworld. So, we get the scene of the Underworld, mainly the vault where the three sacred treasures are, as they are being taken by three shadowy figures who are killing the guards and escaping. And you can hear somebody say, oh no, they took all three of them. And that's when we get our title card. So we already have something brewing in the background as Yusuke is just trying to live his normal day to day, still thinking about this whole being a spirit detective thing that he's gotten the job from Botan and Koenma. So as we go throughout this day, we can see that the students are still a little shook that Yusuke is alive all of a sudden, because a lot of these kids literally went to his funeral, so or his wake at least. So they are pretty sure he died. So it's a little weird to see this man walking, and it just kind of makes the rumors and myths about Yusuke regarding he has 100 motorcycle goons ready to beat you down and kill you, and he's just this ultimate commander of street thugs. It kind of makes the myths and the little tall tales about him around the city more believable, because he's literally come back from the dead. We get a scene of this kid talking about how he got this lucky dragon fountain pen. I believe it's from his uncle who had passed away. And Yusuke walks up on them because they're talking about him. They're saying, oh, Yusuke probably would have taken it if he was still alive. So we get a view of the students being freaked out by it. Yusuke's like, oh, they act like they've seen a ghost. To which Keiko is like, well, yeah, dude, you were dead. And then we get our boy. We haven't seen him in a minute. And this is the only time we will see him in this arc, unfortunately. The man, the myth, the legend, Kazuma Kuwabara. He makes an appearance. He's like, life's hard, I know. But now that you're back, I'll be able to bring it back to Spirit World myself when I'm done with you. So, Kuwabara is happy to have his motivation for wanting to fight and get stronger back. Yusuke, not really the most excited about being at school, but at the same time, he's not going to skip on his first day back. Also, we get an earlier scene of his mom crying over him, wanting him to hurry up and wake up. She's been worried sick ever since he's come back that he might end up just falling asleep and never waking up again. It's funny and comedic, but when you think about it more deeply, she did lose her son for a little bit, so it makes sense why she'd be kind of a nervous wreck. So Yusuke goes to school. Of course, he's ditching gym. And Mr. Iwamoto is not too fucking pleased that Yusuke is alive again. So he ends up trying to frame Yusuke. While the kids are out at gym and Yusuke's out on the roof ditching gym, Iwamoto breaks into the classroom and steals several different items from the students, including that lucky dragon fountain pen. In the meantime, Yusuke is looking at one of the first spirit detective items Botan had given him the night before, the psychic spyglass. Now we see these items sprinkled throughout mainly the first initial season of Yu Yu Hakusho, what is called the Spirit Detective Saga, which we're still on currently. And we don't really see much of them again until much, much later. So they kind of are just like these tools that we have in the early arcs. And it looks like they kind of just got written out of the story because they didn't end up being as important as they maybe were going to be, or they just served their purpose and that's all Togashi needed them for. But our first item is the psychic spyglass. It allows Yusuke to see through people's clothes, to see different items and stuff like that. Yusuke, of course, being the guy he is, attempts to look through Botan's clothes, and Botan gives him a good wallop over the head. So it uses spirit energy for him to use it, so he's gonna have to train with it, and as he slowly gets more and more spirit energy reserves, he'll be able to receive more of these spirit detective items, or at least that was the plan at first. Things do change as we get deeper into the series. So, Iwamoto steals the items, everyone comes back from gym, they can't find their stuff, and of course, they blame Yusuke. They know he skipped gym, their items are gone, it's his first day back, and something already happened. Yusuke, of course, is like, no, I'm no thief, which I think is funny because in the manga, he would steal. He even stated so in the first chapter, that people wouldn't let him into their shops because they thought he was going to steal for them, which he admits he does. He admits he does. So I just think it's funny that the dub goes about that line. They didn't have the insight for it. So Iwamoto, of course, plays up the part of being the teacher who's like, hey, what the hell is going on here? He ends up believing that the students are pretending to believe that the students' accusations on Yusuke are correct, and he takes him into the office. And you got to keep in mind, this is a Japanese school back in the 90s, so this man is smacking Yusuke up as punishment for stealing. And Yusuke's like, I didn't do it. And Iwamoto's like, don't lie, and smacks the shit out of Yusuke, bro. I'm talking, yo, I'm surprised he's not already expelled for fighting these teachers, because I'm sure it's not the first time he's been sent into the office and smacked up for acting out. And hitting the teacher in the school is automatically expulsion. It leads to automatic expulsion. So it's a little wild that he isn't kicked out yet. Takanaka then enters and is like, I hope you have a good reason for, punishing this boy before you even know he did the crime. And Iwamoto, of course, goes with the story that the students believe, that Yusuke stole their items while they were all in gym, and then has the audacity to say he probably learned the trick from his tramp mother. This, of course, sets Yusuke off, and he's ready to throw hands. He's like, you can talk shit about me, my guy, but don't be stepping and talking about my moms like that. So it looks like Yusuke might actually hit this man. And then we get this scene in the manga that in the anime that people always talk about, which we are going to talk about once we get to the manga differences, trust me. Time seems to freeze, and Koenma pops up. And he's like, Yusuke, he's panicked. He's like, Yusuke, you gotta come with me right now. These 3 sacred items have been stolen from the Vault and Spirit World by 3 dangerous demon criminals, and we need to get them back or there's going to be hell to pay. Yusuke, of course, is shocked at the fact Koenma suddenly popped up, and also really doesn't have time for that because he's dealing with Iwamoto for a crime he did not commit. And Yusuke's just like, yo, I have to deal with this ass. And Koenma states, you don't have to worry about him hearing us. It's like we're frozen in time. or, time is frozen around him, of course. Again, we will talk about this when we get to the manga differences. So Yusuke doesn't want to leave, and Koenma's like, look, bro, just take out your psychic spyglass. The culprit's right in front of you. So Yusuke uses the spyglass, and what does he see in Iwamoto's pocket? The Lucky Dragon fountain pen. So he reaches in Iwamoto's pocket, pulls the pen out. Takanaka's like, hey, yo, what the fuck is this? And Iwamoto's like, he probably just slipped it into my pocket. And Iwamoto, of course, scurries out of the classroom, out of the teacher's office as Takanaka goes to follow. Yusuke not satisfied with the fact that Iwamoto's just going to walk away without paying for what he tried to do to him. Koenma says, just attack him invisibly. Yusuke thinks Koenma's being cheeky and, of course, is upset by this. But Koenma's like, nah, I have something as a little gift to you, something that you'll need on your detective cases. So Koenma tells Yusuke to focus energy around his body into his right index finger and act like he's pulling the trigger of a gun to fire it off. This is the first time, folks, we see Yusuke's signature iconic technique, the spirit gun, commonly called the ray gun in the Japanese or in the manga. So Yusuke fires his first spirit gun blast off. It whizzes past Takanaka's head. Of course, he can't see it because he can't see spirit energy. And it hits Iwamoto in the back. And also, Iwamoto can't see it, but he definitely can feel it as he gets smacked in the back, falls over flat on his face. Takanaka and him are shocked. They think he just suddenly got pushed by some invisible force and fell over. So they never even know Yusuke shot him. I love this scene. It's like this is where we're stepping into shonen territory officially with Yu Yu Hakusho. The moment he pulls that trigger, we're a battle shonen. This is it, y'all. At first, we were kind of like this supernatural mystery slice of life thing with some, some fighting here and there because they're delinquents. But now we're just shonen territory at this point. So that pretty much ends the first half of the episode. As the second half, Koenma fills Yusuke in on the case. There are 3 demons who stole these items and are out in the human world to use them. And they want Yusuke to capture them before they can integrate into human society and slip away. But also, Koenma wants them captured because his dad is away on a trip or vacation of some sort. And if he comes back in a week and finds out these items are gone, not only is he and Botan fucked, but the living world is fucked as well. This is why we get like natural disasters on a massive scale in the world of the living. It's because King Yama gets pissed. Koenma's like, you know how it is, Botan. It's all fire and brimstone with him. Botan, of course, is worried because Yusuke is not ready for a case of this magnitude yet. Now, we get into the fun part. Yusuke is tracking these guys down, and he doesn't really know how to find a lead. But then he finds the lead. He sees a big buff dude by the name of Goki walking around. And what does Goki have on his head? Horns. So Yusuke follows along. All the while in the background of the episode, we see these people crowding around like a child because it's like this child suddenly passed out and fell to the ground. Now, while Koenma is watching Yusuke go about this case, he's getting information on the criminals. They know next to nothing about Hiei. They just know he's a loner, real cutthroat guy. Kurama, they barely even know his name or what he's really about. Goki is the run-of-the-mill criminal, has a lot of previous offenses, is wanted for like murder and robberies and all that stuff. So this is the trio they have to deal with. It's bad, and Yusuke is not ready. Now, we have to learn about each one of the items. The Orb of Boss. It takes souls out of people. It sucks their soul, Mortal Kombat style. The Forlorn Hope has an incredible power that can be used especially during the night of a full moon. And the Shadow Sword. Anything that it cuts turns into a demon. So these were the 3 items that were stolen. So as Yusuke's following Goki, he follows him into like the sketchy downtown hoodlum part of the streets of the city. And Goki seems to be waiting for something. He then gets up and leaves. Yusuke goes to follow. And these guys try to hustle Yusuke out of some money. He, of course, beats the crap out of all of them. So he follows Goki into the forest where Goki is meeting up with Kurama and Hiei. It starts to rain. Yusuke's like, damn it, I'm gonna lose track of him. And then he sees there's a portion of the forest in the distance that doesn't seem to be being affected by the rain at all. So in that part of the forest, Hiei's cutting trees and turning the trees that he cuts into demons, and they're flying off. They're like little gargoyle monsters. Hiei's laughing maniacally. This is a very different Hiei than the Hiei we get later as a member of the squad. And there's some reasons for that we'll talk about. So Hiei's just like, with the shadow sword, we'll be able to make a whole army of demons. Goki starts laughing with them because he's like, we can feed them with the souls I get from the Orb of Boss. And then they talk about when Kurama can use the Forlorn Hope during the night of the full moon, they can use its full power, and they're really gonna take over. And then Kurama's like, nah, I'm not really trying to do all that, you know? I'm gonna leave, actually. I'm good. I think our little team is gonna disband now. And Hiei and Goki are not okay with that. Goki's like, if you're gonna leave, give the loot up. You can't just leave with a piece. And Kurama's like, nah, fam, I need that. And Goki wants to step. And Kurama's like, all right, bet, step. So, as it looks like Goki's about to lose his fucking life, Yusuke unintentionally saves him because he shows up to interrupt their little squabble. He says, like, hey, if you guys are going to have a little secret meeting, maybe not make a portion of the forest not rain. So they're wondering who he is, and Hiei's like, it's probably some detective Spirit World hired, and, you know, Yusuke introduces himself. Kurama takes advantage and uses this to escape, because he's like, I ain't got time to be arrested, my dude. Hiei goes off to follow, leaving Goki and Yusuke. Goki's happy to throw down, but he says he needs a little snack first. He needs a little meal to get himself ready. He pulls out the Orb of Boss and pulls out a soul. Goki especially loves the souls of children. And that kid that passed out earlier, he got a soul taken. So Goki, in front of Yusuke, eats the soul as Yusuke's, you know, putting two and two together, and Goki's going about this whole talk of like, it sucks having to cook a soul itself because you gotta rip them apart without destroying the soul, and then you gotta cook the soul so it's like not too much so that it dies, but you want to get the good flavor. But with this, you just suck out pure soul and you get that good clean soul taste. Goki is a very stylish connoisseur of the soul, so to speak. So Yusuke is pissed by this because, as we saw in the previous arc, especially in the manga, Yusuke has a soft spot for kids and he wants to help them out, and he doesn't think innocent people should have to deal with problems like this. So he gives Goki the old 1-2, hits him one shot in the gut, makes him cough up the soul like Gohan kicked Cell and made him spit out 18. Then he gives him a punch straight to the jaw, laying Goki out. Soul floats off to go back to its body. Yusuke thinks, cool, 1 item down, 2 to go. It's not so simple. As we get to the end of episode 6, Goki gets to his feet. Yusuke's like, nah, lay down. I hit you way too hard for you to get back up. Goki's like, nah, fam, I'm good. And he shapeshifts into his true form. I believe it's called a Gukon Ki, a giant soul-sucking ogre. And the key trait of these ogres is their skin, which is hard as fuck, making it almost impossible to break through. So in like 1 or 2 shots, Yusuke is taken down by Goki, left in critical condition, laid out on the floor. He thought of maybe using the spirit gun, but he already used it today, as Koenma told him at this point, with the level of energy he has, he can only shoot the spirit gun once per day. So it looks like my boy's about to die. And that's when episode 5 ends. And my least favorite thing about the Yu Yu Hakusho anime is before they play the ending theme, which slaps, by the way, every Yu Yu Hakusho ending theme fucking slaps. They do the next time, you know, on Yu Yu Hakusho, and it always spoils critical moments like this. So you off the bat know that he's gonna be fine. It's not like we thought he was going to die this early into the series again. But it's like, come on, don't kill the tension that quickly. But yeah, that concludes episode 6. Now, we'll probably be moving through the next two episodes fairly quickly just because I've already laid out the groundwork for the arc in this episode 6 summary. So episodes 7 and 8 should be a little faster as we're just going to break down what happened in these two episodes. Episode 7, Goki and Kurama. So we leave off exactly where episode 6 ended. Yusuke about to be fucking murdered and devoured by Goki, dying for the second time in the show. But what happens? There's these random voices coming from the woods just out of sight, but Yusuke and Goki can hear them. It sounds like somebody imitating the voice of a group of hunters, and they have big dogs and guns and weapons and such, like things like that. And Goki's like, nah, I don't fuck with villagers with big dogs and guns. I'm gonna get out of here. Consider yourself lucky, kid, and don't ever step to me again if you want to keep your life. Yusuke then passes out, wakes up in his bed at home. Again, his mom worried sick that my boy was about to die. This time, it's a little more valid because he comes home fucking beat to shit. Botan apparently brought him back to his house. So now Atsuko knows of Botan, but she does not know of the cases. So she doesn't know about the cases, about being spirit detective and things of that nature. So Botan and Yusuke are having a chat about Goki and what Yusuke can do. He's also informed that he's got about a week to get these 3 items, or else there's going to be hell to pay for Earth when King Yema gets back. So Yusuke's like, I don't know what I can do, but I got to try something. I can't let this guy just kill these people like this, because if they just lose their souls and they're devoured, they can't even go to spirit world to get onto a different afterlife. They're just gonna be gone, which is a terrifying fucking thought. You don't even move on to the afterlife. You just cease to be. Especially in a world where there is a spirit world, you kind of probably would want to go there. You probably don't want to just not exist anymore. And Botan informs Yusuke that it'll take about a day for the souls Goki eats to digest, so time's running out. She gives him the second item, the second spirit detective item, the concentration ring. As Yusuke puts this on his right index finger, it amplifies the charge of spirit energy gathered for the spirit gun, making the spirit gun much stronger. Again though, he can only shoot the spirit gun once a day. On top of that, as he uses it with the concentration ring, the overall drain is even more severe than just the spirit gun by itself. Meaning he should only use it as an absolute last resort, because it's going to be hard for him to stand after firing a spirit gun with that. And even then, he might not be strong enough to blast through Goki's hardened skin. So Yusuke is at a big disadvantage here, but we're going to see the first of many times Yusuke pulls out his greatest skills. Well, in the manga, it's not the first time. In the anime, it is the first of many times Yusuke pulls out one of his greatest skills, luck. So as Atsuko's watching TV and hearing more reports of these kids just randomly passing out, Yusuke's like, I gotta do something. He goes out. Meanwhile, Goki's out catching more kids' souls. It's really fucked up when you think about it. Goki's such a lower level worthless villain. You don't really think about how fucked up it was that he lured kids to him by rolling the orb of Bost out like it was like a ball, like a plaything, like a toy. Like a girl's like, here's your ball back, mister. And Goki's like, such a sweet girl. And then he takes her fucking soul and leaves. It's awful. So he's trying to, skedaddle, go about his day, and Yusuke approaches him again. And Goki's like, bro, for real? You really about to try this shit again? Did you not hear me? And he's like, yeah, I heard you. I'm just stupid. Love that meme, by the way. So they get on to round 2. We get our reused animation of Goki transforming into his ogre form, and they go at it again. Goki's swinging tree trunks at him. Yusuke tries to use those to his advantage to try to stab into Goki. Nothing is breaking through his skin. It's not looking good for Yusuke once again as he's getting smacked around by Goki. And then he's on his knees, ready to fire the spirit gun, but he's like, fuck, what can I do? Hey, maybe I'll fire it in his eye and then he'll be blind, right? No, he has 2 eyes. I love the banter. And just the dialogue and just all that stuff that goes on in Yu Yu Hakusho. The script is top notch, even for the dub. I feel like a lot of older dubs we all know didn't have very great scripts, but I think Yu Yu Hakusho almost nails it. There's a few little things, like a few background voices that are funny, like I talked about in the last episode, but I think stuff like this works really well. So as it looks like things are fucked for him, who comes out to help? Botan, throwing a branch at Goki to distract him. Goki then turns his attention to her. She runs and gets behind Yusuke. Goki is ready to go for the kill, mouth wide open. What does Yusuke do? Shove a large piece of wood into his mouth to keep it open like a splint, right? So now Goki's mouth is left open, and Yusuke's like, your skin's hard, but I bet your insides aren't. Point blank to the face, fires his spirit gun into Goki's mouth, blasting him and laying him out. Fun fact, that car was loud as shit. I hope you guys didn't hear that. But if you did, I'm sorry. Fun fact, Goki actually did not die here. He's laid out, but it's later said that Goki is arrested, which means he lived. So go figure, Yusuke did not kill him, but he did lay him out with that attack, which was a bit of luck due to Botan's interference and Yusuke managing to get Goki to get close with his big open mouth. So we got the Orb of Bast, but Yusuke again is beat the fuck up and drained of almost all his energy. So now we move on to the second half of the episode where Yusuke encounters Kurama. Kurama approaches Yusuke as Botan's carrying him back to his place, and Kurama's like, look, I don't want to fight, bro. I'll give you the mirror and turn myself in. Give me 3 days. Botan's like, should you trust him? As she's, patching up his wounds. And he's like, look, it didn't seem like he was lying. It just kind of felt as if he was telling the truth. He didn't have any malice or intent. He seemed like he was really genuine about giving that mirror back. I believe it's also around this time we get detective item number 3, the Demon Compass. So the Demon Compass is going to be able to track demon energy via the user's own spirit energy. So the stronger the user is, or the more spirit energy they have, the wider radius the compass can cover to track demon energy. So Yusuke then goes to find Kurama 3 days later, meets him at the hospital, and Kurama introduces him to his mother, who's in the hospital. She's very sick, and Kurama's taking care of her. He's doting over her. He's like, you should eat. She's like, I'm not hungry. He's like, you need to keep your strength up. I'm gonna peel you an apple. It's adorable, to be fully honest with you, and I can see why a lot of people fell in love with Kurama for more than just his looks at a first glance. So Yusuke then is talking to Kurama because he's confused. He's like, demons have parents? So Kurama's like, well, to her, I'm just Suichi. But, he gives his origin story. So Kurama was a spirit fox long, long ago, and he gained enough power and he loved solving puzzles and tricks in order to get to secret treasures or hidden weapons. But he was injured by a strong and powerful hunter after him, and mortally wounded as a result. So what did he do? He turned himself into a more spiritual form and put himself into an embryo of a woman. Now, there is a lot of contention and debate about Kurama's situation. I'm going to get more into that when we go over the manga differences, because the manga, I think, explains this a little better than the anime does. And it's easy to kind of see why there's confusion, but it's, even in the anime, it's stated that it's a merger, not a possession. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. So Kurama was just going to hang out, be young, be raised by this lady and her husband. The husband, of course, Kurama's dad, passed away when he was younger. But one day, Kurama realized, this woman has been taking care of me. She loves me dearly, and I've kind of been an ass growing up to her, never really being that good of a son. So when she started getting weak and getting ill, he grew feelings for her. He cared about her. That was his mother. And so that's why he wanted the Forlorn Hope. He wants to use its power to save his mom. I think that's noble as fuck. So Kurama then is like, I'm gonna use it tonight. I'm gonna save my mom and wish for her happiness. As Yusuke and him are talking, Yusuke can relate, with his mom and being dead and all of that. The doctors rush to get Kurama. They inform him his mom has entered a critical state, and it shouldn't be funny, and I shouldn't laugh, but the delivery and the dub of this doctor talking to Kurama and saying, your mother is about to die. Like, bro, why did you deliver that line like that? If you've watched the dub, you know what I'm talking about. So Kurama's like, okay, fuck it, I gotta use the mirror now. And Kurama knows what you have to offer up to the Forlorn Hope in order to use it. Koenma is then informing Botan in Spirit World what that is. Life. You give up your life in exchange for the wish or desire you want fulfilled from the mirror. Thus the name Forlorn Hope, at least in the dub. So Botan rushes off to go help Yusuke because that sounds very worrying. Kurama's 100% willing to give up his life to save his mom, and it looks like the mayor is going to fulfill that when Yusuke steps in. He asks the mayor to take some of his life too, that way Kurama doesn't have to die. Kurama's like, what are you doing? Yusuke's like, hey man, there's no point in your mom living if she has to live without her son. You don't want to die and make your mom sad. I've already gone through that. It's not a good experience. So the Forlorn Hope then does that. Due to Yusuke's noble deed, he grants the wish without taking life, or at least takes a piece of each of their lives. So Kurama goes to check on his mom. His mom has miraculously made a full turnaround and she'll be able to recover and go home soon. So due to Yusuke's interference, Kurama's mom is saved and Kurama gets to live. So Kurama does end up turning himself in. And we hear later that Kurama, is put on parole and he might get off with good behavior and be okay. And he'll get to be with his mom, which is beautiful. So now Yusuke has 2 of the 3 items, but we still have the most dangerous demon to face yet, with the most dangerous item to face yet, as we enter episode 8 and the finale of the 3 monsters arc. Episode 8, The 3 Eyes of Hiei. It starts off with Yusuke on the roof talking with Botan about what they're going to do about Hiei, who is the most dangerous of the 3 monsters that we've seen thus far. And he's in possession of the Shadow Sword. Anything it cuts turns into a demon. As they're talking, Botan, is wearing a school uniform, and Yusuke comments on this, saying, doesn't she look, Botan's like flexing. She's like, don't I look nice? Don't I look pretty? And she's, trying to blend in with the crowd and not stand out too much. As they're talking, Keiko comes up to the roof to get Yusuke because Takanaka wanted to speak to him. She then sees Botan, big cheese, and she's like, oh my god, Keiko, it's you. She's like geeking out. She loves Keiko due to seeing how great she is, in the ordeal arc. And she's like, when you jumped in the fire to get Yusuke's body, I was like, oh my goodness. And Yusuke's like, hey, cut that shit out. I did not tell Keiko about all the Spirit World stuff. He doesn't want to involve her in that, so he hasn't told her yet. So Botan's like, ooh, I gotta go. I got stuff to do. And she's like, but look, Yusuke, you should tell her sooner or later. It's gonna get messy if you don't. So now Keiko is showing a little bit of jealousy. She doesn't know who this strange woman is. She doesn't know what they're talking about, what little secrets Yusuke is hiding. Yusuke promises to tell her when the time is right and he can really get it all together and explain it well enough. But Keiko is just like, nah, bro, it's cool, whatever. Takanaka wants to see you. It's not a big deal. So, she does what girls do back in the day when you're young and you got your girlfriend in middle school and high school. She gives you the cold shoulder. She gives you the, it's okay, when it's in fact not okay. All my fellas and all my ladies, if you swing that way, you know what I mean. Like, that shit is not good. So Yusuke's trying to explain himself. Meanwhile, off from a very far distance, Hiei is watching. Hiei then is revealed to have a third eye, and that's how he is watching Yusuke, and he has a little henchman demon on the shoulder as they spy on him, and they see that Keiko Yukimura and Yusuke are close. They're childhood friends. And Hiei's like, alright, I can use that. So, as Yusuke and Botan are still thinking of a way they can find Hiei and fight against him, Keiko's, walking home, thinking about what happened earlier on the roof, and it's just like, whatever, boys, so stupid. We kind of are. Hiei walks past, and he's like, don't worry, Keiko, I think he likes you just fine. And he swings on her as Keiko turns around. So Keiko gets cut. Botan goes to inform Yusuke that, we got Hiei. So Yusuke's using the demon compass to, track him. And Yusuke's like, should I be able to track him from this far? My spirit energy isn't that high. And Botan informs him that Hiei is flexing his own energy to lead Yusuke to him. Yusuke is like, oh, okay, he thinks this is a game. Botan's like, nah, he don't think this is a fucking game. He's been using telepathy to tell me horrible things. And then she tells Yusuke that he has Keiko, and that he's like, if you want Keiko back, you gotta bring me the other 2 items right away. So Yusuke's like, oh, fuck. So they meet him at this warehouse, and this is where our final showdown for the arc takes place. Yusuke and Botan enter. They see like these mind control humans who have been cut by the sword, and they see Keiko passed out being held by them. Meanwhile, Hiei's leading the group, and he's like, you bring the items, you bring the stuff, little warehouse deal, you know how it is back in the 90s with the drugs. So Yusuke's like, yeah, here. And he hands over the Forlorn Hope and the Orb of Boss. And Hiei's thugs drop Keiko off to them. And Hiei's like, haha, I finally got all 3. Time to get my evil on. And Yusuke's like, nah, son, it's not about to go down that way, you see. And Yusuke's like, since, you gave me Keiko back and I got her, you think I'm really about to let you get away after pulling that shit? And they're about to throw down. So Yusuke runs up to swing on Hiei. Hiei's gone. Hiei then flexes his famous speed, saying like, I only move slightly to the side. Like, what are you doing, boy? So Hiei's not too fazed by Yusuke kind of going back on their word, because Hiei planned to go back on his word. He's like, you really think I was just going to give up the girl without collateral? And we start to see a third eye form on Keiko's forehead. It starts to try to open, and Botan quickly uses her powers to try to keep the eye shut, because if it opens fully, Keiko will be turned into a demon under the control of Hiei. So while she's holding that at bay, Yusuke has to fight off Hiei and get the Shadow Sword, because the antidote is in the hilt of the blade. So they start to fight. Yusuke can't land a shot on him at first due to how fast Hiei is, but due to Yusuke's emotions, of Keiko and Botan being in serious trouble right now, he's able to power up and land a heavy hit on Hiei. Hiei's shocked by this because Yusuke is clearly not fast enough to keep up with him. And then we get the famous shonen skill trait of any protagonist. When your emotions, are at an all-time high, your power increases. Now, this is such a shonen cliche, but this isn't me just being a Yu Yu Hakusho shill. I think it works really well in the case of Yu Yu Hakusho, especially for characters like Yusuke and Kuwabara. Mainly so Yusuke, because Yusuke's whole character arc has a lot to do with him getting over this wall of emotions he puts up. And actually being true to his own feelings and his own thoughts. And it works for his character directly. It's a part of his growth. It's not just like, I'm mad, I gotta protect my friend's power up. He progresses as a character and as a person. And thus he has more access to his own powers because he has a better understanding of himself, I feel. That's my opinion personally. It still is a cliche, but I think it's a cliche used well and used to the advantage of the story and the characters. But yeah, he makes an actual story note that, oh, I see, you're the type that gets stronger when you need to protect your friends. So Yusuke lands another shot on Hiei. Hiei is like, okay, this is fucking annoying. And he reveals his true form. He's covered in 3 eyes. His skin's green. His hair kind of goes from like Vegeta to a little more split up. And he's like, Now I'm about to fuck you up. And fuck him up he does. Not only is he way faster than he was before and way stronger, the possession taking place over Keiko's body is getting enhanced due to Hiei transforming into his true form. And now Botan's having an even harder time holding it back. Meanwhile, outside of the warehouse, we see somebody approaching. Is like, such powerful energy, I need to go in and help. But they don't show us who it is, but you can kind of tell who it is pretty much if you're watching the anime. So, Yusuke's trying to land a blow on Hiei. He can't land a shot. Hiei then uses his Jigan Tai curse, or the Jigan binding curse, which paralyzes Yusuke and has him bound in this like orangish yellow energy rings around his body, and it's squeezing onto him. And Hiei is then about to land the finishing blow by stabbing him with the shadow sword, when Kurama jumps out in front of Yusuke and takes the stab directly to his gut. This is the first but not the last time we see one of the key features in Kurama's fighting style, putting himself in harm's way to find a critical weakness in the enemy. And does he do that here? Of course he does. And we get a classic line as Kurama takes some of his blood and whips it onto Hiei's third eye. And Hiei's like, ah, my eye, my Jigan, ah. Line deliveries, dude. Sometimes they're just too good in the dub. So Kurama's like, I'll be all right. Don't trip. You got to get that shadow sword from Hiei still. The extra eyes on his body just amplify the power from his third eye. This should help hold back Keiko's possession, but you still got to get the sword from him so we can get the antidote. Time's of the essence. So Kurama's not going to be in fighting condition because, you know, he has a hole in his stomach. So Yusuke then powers up even more due to this, and he is like, all right, so I see you keep getting stronger. I'm gonna have to take you out before this becomes a serious problem. Hiei still proves to be stronger and faster than Yusuke. They have the classic back and forth clash, and you know, it's like reused animation of them like swinging back and forth against each other. I think it's used really well. I like this scene, especially in the anime. I think it looks really cool, of Yusuke trying to land that blow on Hiei and not quite being able to do it. Hiei's teleporting everywhere, kicking Yusuke in all different parts of his body. Yusuke looks to be down for the count. He notices the forlorn hope in the distance on the ground. And as Hiei closes in for the kill once again, Yusuke fires off his spirit gun. Hiei, shocked by this, but is agile enough to jump up and dodge at the last second. Thus, the attack misses him. And Hiei's like, ha! Your last move failed, and boom, Hiei takes a spirit gun shot to the back. He's shocked by this. He turns to see the forlorn hope cracked because Yusuke used it as a mirror to bounce his gun off. And Hiei's like, all right, impressive. I can't believe he did that. Hiei reverts back to his normal form and passes out. Yusuke manages to get the sword, opens up from the hilt, and pours the antidote in Keiko's mouth, thus stopping the possession. So it looks like we got all three items and problem solved. One fun part is we get more of Yusuke's dumb luck into his fighting style, because Kurama and Botan are actually kind of impressed that he was able to think of something like that. To which Yusuke replies, oh yeah, you know, lucky break. I just kind of, you know, remember in class about light bouncing off of mirrors, and so I thought I'd give it a shot. And Botan's like, what would have happened if it didn't work? Well, we probably would have just died. And Kurama's laughing at the dumb luck actually being able to work. So then we shift over to like the next day. Yusuke's bragging that he was able to do it with like a day or two to spare to get all three items back. And Botan's like, well, King Yama found out anyway because the sword had bloodstains on it and the forlorn hope was a pile of broken glass. But since the items were returned, the living world is spared, but Koenma still received a punishment of 100 spankings, which is hilarious, and Yusuke of course laughs about it. Keiko then shows up on the roof again, sees Botan and Yusuke talking together, and is like, oh, okay. And she leaves, and Yusuke's like, fuck, I forgot to tell her. I forgot to explain things to her. So he goes off to chase after her, and Botan, you know, delivers a cool little anime line to end the episode. Out of all those opponents, she's the one that gets them every time. Thus ending episode 8, and thus ending our first case of the 3 monsters. With the anime out of the way, let's quickly go over the manga differences. There are drastically less differences, so instead of listing chapter by chapter, I'm just gonna talk about the differences briefly. One fun difference in the manga I find that I really enjoy is that Atsuko's ties to the Yakuza are brought up once again, because it seems like she used her pull for like gang members or Yakuza members to get Yusuke enrolled back into school, which I think is hilarious. Another difference is when Iwamoto is taking the items from the class to frame Yusuke with, he pockets the dragon pen. I mean, in the anime, we see the pen is in his pocket, but he personally is going to take that one and keep it to himself. He even thinks of the idea of burning the other students' items so that they can't even be found, just to put Yusuke in an even tougher situation. Now, big difference. A lot of people have always debated on Koenma's power and if this is a plot hole or not. Because in episode 6, we see Koenma stops time to talk to Yusuke while he's in the teacher's office with Iwamoto. Now, in the manga, he does not stop time. He pops up to Yusuke and Yusuke can see him, but Iwamoto and Takanaka cannot. So it just kind of looks like Yusuke is looking at something that they can't see. So that is the difference. It's an anime change. Don't worry about it too hard. It's just something that the anime decided to do for some reason or whatnot. Another difference, Goki's design, and at least in his face in the manga, I feel is very different for his human form at least. His ogre form does look a little more monstrous in the manga too, but it's overall still similar. So is the human form. Face just looks a little uglier in the manga, which I kind of enjoy. Hiei's design is also slightly different because he wasn't built to be a main character yet. He was going to be that one-off villain for the arc. He was just going to be that major antagonist for the first case. But due to several different reasons that we might talk about later on, maybe if we do a Hiei character analysis, Hiei ended up being a main character and his design was slightly shifted to look a little more cool, a little more polished and finished to the Hiei we know from the main series of our four boys. So that's some fun stuff just for early little info. Another tiny difference is when Yusuke finds Goki, Kurama, and Hiei in the forest and it's raining all around except that one spot they're at, it is not raining in the manga at all. Yusuke just tracks them down. In fact, the little chase scene of Yusuke following the soul that led him to Goki and he sees Goki's horns and all of that is not in the manga at all. It just kind of cuts to Yusuke finding them talking in the forest. And that scene is pretty similar in the manga and as it is in the anime, except Hiei isn't cutting trees and turning them into demons, because the Shadow Sword in the manga more specifically turns humans into demons. I believe it probably could cut other objects and turn them into demons too, but the manga kind of makes it more stated that it's people it cuts to turn them into like low-level demons rather than just any random thing. So, you know, another little shift. A big change is Botan is not really there that much for the portions where Yusuke is fighting Goki in his encounter with Kurama initially. She does save Yusuke from Goki the first time, but in the second fight where she interferes before Yusuke is able to land the shot in Goki's mouth, it's some random kid that stumbles upon them and sees them, and that distraction is used for Yusuke to eventually save the kid and take advantage, thus beating Goki with the point-blank spirit gun shot. When Yusuke is walking and encounters Kurama that night when he's still injured, it's just Yusuke by himself again. Botan is not there. She is around for the Hiei incident, and she does, use her powers to keep Keiko from turning into a demon, but she's not around for that Kurama and that second Goki fight. So another difference, I prefer the anime. I like seeing Botan more involved. She's supposed to be Yusuke's assistant, so it feels more natural for her to be there, at least in that very baseline supporting role. It's also stated in the manga that Kurama's mother has that love interest already. Like, he's an owner of a small company and he can take care of her, and Kurama wishes for her happiness to be with that man. That's why he wants her to get over that illness. I'm sure this is pretty much supposed to be the man Kurama's mom marries later on in the series, as we see in the anime. He's just not mentioned in the anime until much later, whereas in the manga, he's already brought up as a character. And he's the one that's like, oh my god, Kurama, your Suichi, it's your mom. Something's wrong, instead of like a doctor or a nurse coming up to the roof at first when they tell him his mom has entered the critical stage. So other than that, the Forlorn portion goes just about the same. Yusuke wanting to give up part of his life so Kurama doesn't have to die and he can be with his family, and Kurama getting probation. Few more little differences at the Hiei portion. When Kurama gets stabbed with the Shadow Sword, he does in fact use his blood once again to blind Hiei's third eye. The sword remains embedded in his stomach while Yusuke is fighting Hiei barehanded, and Yusuke isn't the one that gives Keiko the antidote. Off screen, Kurama and Botan did that because Kurama had the sword because it was impaled through his stomach. Kurama also seems to be in much better condition in the manga than the anime, even though he was stabbed in the stomach. He's like, I'm a demon. It's going to take a lot more than that to, take me down. So it implies that demons can be stabbed like that, and they're just a bit more durable, which I think works a little more for Kurama and makes sense why Kurama's able to survive so many fucking near deaths that he does in the anime and the manga. Because Kurama's strong, he's smart, he's crafty, but my man puts himself at death's door every time to just pinpoint a weakness in a fight, unless he's gone to his true, like, Yoko spirit fox form. So I was like, oh, okay, nice little detail. And I believe that covers all the differences between the manga and the anime, at least all the major ones. This arc, for the most part, pretty much plays out just about the same as it does in the anime. Like I said, there are those few differences. Oh, before we move on to the final portion and wrap up the video, I should bring up the Suichi Kurama situation. Now, a lot of people get this confused because I've seen a lot of people online, a lot of Yu Yu Hakusho fans, heavy Yu Yu Hakusho fans, still believe that Kurama is possessing the body of Suichi, and that Suichi's soul wasn't able to get into the body, or like it's trapped with Kurama in there. Again, it is a merger, not a possession. I think it's explained a little better in the manga. When Kurama turned himself into a spirit form, he entered an embryo that had not yet acquired a soul. So he didn't kick a soul out of a poor baby's body and just take the body and possess it. He is the soul for the embryo. He took over the embryo before it even received a soul. I'm assuming just about the time when the baby's about to be born, Spirit World gives it a soul. Kurama just was like, I'm gonna slip in there and take that spot. Or at least when it's the child is developed enough as a fetus in the mom's stomach, it gains a soul, like a few months in. Kurama just early took that embryo. So he didn't possess anything. He didn't take any soul. He merged with that embryo. Kurama, I guess the way to put it, essentially reincarnated himself in this human form of Suichi. He was able to keep his memories of being the spirit fox form Kurama, but he was just reborn again as this human demon hybrid kind of thing. So that's the way I would explain it. If you just want like a short explanation, he reincarnated himself. Suichi and Kurama are essentially one and the same person. This does get into like a bit of a dub issue when we will talk about Yoko Kurama later in the series, because there's a bit of confusion about that form too. But for me to just lay it out for you now, Kurama, Suichi, and Yoko, they're all the same person. Just kind of think of them as different iterations of Kurama, but they're all Kurama. It's not like this is a different personality or this is they're all Kurama. He reincarnated himself. But it fits into Kurama's character and a lot of things he's going to have to deal with in the series going forward when it comes to identity for himself. And I think that's really neat. But other than that, that takes care of all the major differences. And let's just move on into what I think of the arc overall, and we'll wrap up. I like the Three Monsters arc. I think it's solid. It's not like the greatest arc to write home about, but it's a solid start to get Yu Yu Hakusho into its battle shonen-esque format that we're going to see moving forward, because from this point on we're getting into big fighty territory. Gone are the days of just solving spirit problems, being a little ghosty guy running around through the city. We are now into we solving cases, we going to throw hands with demons. That's what the Three Monsters arc lays out. And I kind of like, the reason why I like calling it the Three Monsters arc is I think it's a cool little parallel or mirror to what we will see on a grander scale when we get to the Three Kings portion of the story, which is very much near the end of Yu Yu Hakusho. But you got the Three Kings, you got the Three Monsters. Both arcs heavily involve Yusuke, Kurama, and Hiei. Both in the Three Monsters arc, it's when we're first introduced to Kurama and Hiei. In the Three Kings saga, we're introduced to the Three Demon Kings that all have an interest in Yusuke, Kurama, and Hiei for very different reasons. So I like the parallel between it, the storylines there, at least from that like surface level. I kind of enjoy that. The three sacred items have very different names in the manga and the anime and stuff like that, but when we get to like techniques and like items and stuff like that, when we start doing videos of that nature, I'll go over those and like a lot of like the language translation differences, you know, like spirit gun and ray gun, or like techniques of that nature. We'll get to those when we get to those videos. But overall, this arc is solid. It's a good start for a shonen. Do I prefer the anime or the manga for this arc? Now, for the Ordeal arc, I do prefer the manga. I do like the extra context it brings to the story. I like how it fleshes out Yusuke's character a lot more, because we get about 18 chapters worth of Yusuke going about these little mini storylines, seeing other spiritual problems and solving them, and seeing that Yusuke is a delinquent. He is kind of like a thug, but he has a good heart and he's a good person. And while we do see that plenty in the anime, especially in the Ordeal arc of the anime, I feel like it's displayed a lot more in the manga. But I think for this arc, I prefer the anime. And the reason for that is it's the first shonen-esque arc of the story. So I feel for the manga, it's not quite as refined as it is in the anime. I feel like the changes made to the anime to make it more streamlined in those 3 episodes, to take those 6 chapters and put it into those 3 episodes, I think it worked better the way it was laid out in the anime. It felt like it was a lot smoother. The transitions from one enemy into the next worked a lot better, and it just felt right. It felt a little bumpy in the manga, like it felt very like writing this as we go-esque, you know, instead of just like these short stories that go on to link into that greater arc of the Ordeal arc. We have these 6 chapters that are meant to be this one storyline, but there's kind of bumps in the road, there's kind of slowdowns and little detours here and there. And it's not bad, but I feel like the anime refined this arc a little better. So I do prefer the anime version of it, but the manga arc is still solid. I do like the differences between the two. I find them interesting. And again, if Yu Yu Hakusho was to get some sort of anime like remake, I would want some of like the manga exclusive stuff to be shown. Like if we're already going to show like Atsuko's ties to the Yakuza, like we saw in the Ordeal arc, you got to bring that up again in the Three Monsters arc, and that's how she got Yusuke back in the school. I would love to see stuff like that, like little background details in terms of like the action and how the main meat and plot of the arc went. I think the anime streamlines it a bit better. Not a lot of character growth. In the anime, Botan shows that she's a great assistant, so I like that a lot. Yusuke, you know, is getting to flex his heroics a little more for the first time ever. It feels a lot more like a debut for the anime than it does in the manga, because we got a lot more of Yusuke in the manga before that. But in the anime, it's just like, yeah, you know, we're laying out Yusuke as this detective. He's starting off, he's a bit green, he's a bit naive, he still has a long way to go. But we're going to get to Yusuke's first major hurdle as a detective in the next arc, which will be the Genkai tournament, or the Genkai selection arc is what I like to call it. And that will be split into 2 parts. I won't exactly say how I'm going to split it because I'm not sure quite yet. I'll probably do a community post on it. But that thus concludes Ghost Files Declassified Case File 3, the 3 Monsters arc. Now, as you guys get ready to head out for the night, I do want to say I'm sorry that it took so long for the video to come out. I am preoccupied with other stuff. I work, a normal 9-to-5 job. I get home. I am working on my own story that I'm writing, and I try to get, my pages into write that. I work on music here and there on the side. I like to have time to play video games. When I do, it's usually later in the night, in the evening, when I have a few hours before bed. I work on a podcast with a buddy of mine, so I have to worry about that. And I am getting married in June, so we're getting closer and closer to that date. I'm getting my room rearranged, set up for when my fiance does move in. And, I'm spending time with my fiance. I'm enjoying the good life. So I do have a lot going on. I'm not overstressed. I've managed to schedule myself a little better than I have in the past. But yeah, I did let time get ahead of me, and that's why this video did take 3 weeks to come out. I also didn't think this video would be just as long as the Ordeal arc, but surprise, surprise, it's just as long as the Ordeal arc. Whoops, not my intention. The script was a bit sloppy because due to timing constraints. I apologize for that. I apologize for my rambles and tangents. Hopefully next episode it'd be a bit more streamlined, kind of like the Ordeal arc. If you do kind of like the more rambly talks, I can make my scripts more loose like this. But if you want the more so structured scripts that I did, like for the episode about Tagashi in the Ordeal arc, just let me know. Just give me a comment. But other than that, sorry it took so long. Sorry for the sloppy script. But that about covers the 3 Monsters arc. And next time we will be covering the first half of the Genkai selection arc. It's one of my favorite arcs in Yu Yu Hakusho, where we get introduced to one of my favorite characters in Yu Yu Hakusho. And we also get a bunch of the GOAT Kuwabara, who was not in the 3 Monsters portion of the story. Another parallel between 3 Monsters and 3 Kings. Kuwabara was not there. So it's a fun time. So hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'll have that first video out. But this video has been long enough. I've rambled on long enough. I hope you guys enjoyed the file. I hope you guys enjoyed the meal. And I will catch you next time for another episode of Ghost Files Declassified. And as always, thanks for stopping by to the Ramen Shop Detective Agency.
Move this man!